Okay, first thing you want to do is open up the Lightroom catalog. My Lightroom catalog for the exposure project is in the Photo 1 class. I double click on exposure, and then within that exposure folder I have my raw photos, and then I have my exposure catalog. So I click on exposure catalog, choose the Lightroom, click on it, and it will open up Lightroom down here. I went ahead and closed out of the folder because I don't need that anymore. Alright, so here's my catalog. Right now you'll notice at the bottom you see all of my images. That's because I haven't filtered this down yet. Now last time we were here I did create a filter and I rated the ones that I liked the most. If it was, like say this one, I liked it worth 3 stars, and this one was not quite as good, so I marked it as 2 stars. If you needed to rate them, you would select it, you'd look at the one image, and you'd press the number on the keyboard that correlates. So if this is a 2-star photo, I'd press the number 2 on my keyboard, and it will say set rating to 2. If I thought it was a 1-star, I would press the 1 on the keyboard. If I thought it was a 4, I'd press the 4. That gives it a rating. I'm going to rate this one a 1. Then if I just want to see the photos that were rated 3 stars and higher, on the right side where it says filter off, I would click on that and I would go to rated, and then I would choose how many stars and above. Right now I'm showing 1 star and above, so you see quite a few images at the bottom. If I choose 3 stars and above, it's going to narrow that down. With all these photos, you will edit them under the Develop tab. We're not going to worry about editing them in the Develop tab right now. We've already done that. But you would experiment with the options on the right. If for some reason it shows the file could not be found, that means I had it in one spot when I first opened it in Lightroom, but now it's in a different spot. So if you put a photograph on your desktop and then later you move it into a folder, Lightroom's not going to know where to find it. I'm not going to change that right now. I'm not going to try and find that photograph, but just know once you've created a spot on your computer for your photographs, you're going to leave them in that same spot. That's why within my Photo 1 class, I've got a folder for every project, and then each project will have all my raw photos. If I need to take more photos for the exposure project, I'm going to put them in the exposure raw photos so that I can find them later on. Alright, so back to here. Everybody click on Library tab. It's the tab that says Library. You want to just see the photos that you picked. You pick them by pressing the letter P, right? You've already sifted it down. Right now I'm just showing my rated images with stars. I'm going to choose Custom Filter, and instead I'm going to scroll down to where it says Flagged. So now I just see the 5 images that I've flagged. If I click Export right now, which is right above here, it's going to say I was unable to find it. Remember, I had moved that one file somewhere, so you might get this error. If you do, it just means your computer can't find that file. I'm going to say OK. And then what comes up, or should come up, oh, let me choose a different file. Click Export. Yours will look a little bit different. It might not have all this stuff. It might say desktop. You won't have that. You won't have that. It might look something like this. You might have to drop down these two. These are the 2 areas we're going to focus on: the export location and the file naming. When we do this, we want to do this with all of our photos though. Right now, you can see right here at the top it says export one file. Well, we want to export multiple files all at once. So I have to hit cancel. Then I'm going to use my favorite keyboard shortcut to select all of these images. My favorite keyboard shortcut is Command A. You'll notice they're all highlighted. Now when I click on export, it's going to show me this first that says, oh, you've got some missing images. It's just that first one. And I'm going to say, yes, I do want to continue. Now at the top, it says export 5 files. Right? Any questions so far? What we've done? Okay, if you only have one image, one photograph that you've taken, I want you to export it. I want you to go through this process so that you understand it. It can get complicated if you don't do it with me at the same time. Now I will have this, I'm creating a video right now, so you can look at that video later on, but that's going to be a pain to have to look through several minutes of video to try and find the stuff that you need. It'd be better if you just follow along with what I'm doing right now. So the first spot, we've got the export to. We don't want it to save at some random spot in photos and in the documents or something like that. So I'm going to say export to a specific folder. Go ahead and do that. Now I've told them I want to put it in a specific folder. So now I've got to choose which area that's going to be. So I click on choose. I want it to be on my desktop. I want it to be in the Photo 1 class. Yours might say Commercial Photo 1 or Commercial Photo, but Photo 1 class, that's where I have all my projects. Now I'm working on the exposure project, so I'm going to choose exposure. I'm not going to mix it in with the catalog, and I'm not going to mix it in with my raw photos. I'm going to create a subfolder within the exposure folder. So once we're to this point, I can click on choose. And then I'm going to check this box that says put in a subfolder. Yours might not have anything written down. It probably shouldn't, or it might say something random. So change it to exposure finals, because these are your final photographs that you're exporting from Lightroom. You've gone through, you've rated them, you've picked out your favorites, and so you want them to be in a folder called exposure finals. You don't want to add them to this catalog. That would be silly. And where it says existing files, make sure it says ask what to do. So like if I'm missing a file, I want them to ask me what to do when that time comes. Any questions on export location? Okay, we're going to move down now to file naming. We want to rename our files to a custom name in sequence. What that means is we can write whatever we want this file to be, and in sequence means it will number it for us. So custom name sequence. For your custom name, I want you to put the class period. So 4B. If you're in a different class period, if you were in 2A, you would put 2A. Then I want you to type your last name, space, and then type your first name, space, and then go ahead and type the name of this assignment, which is the exposure assignment, right? So I just wrote exposure. You'll notice below where we create that custom name, it shows an example of what the file will look like. And then up here, we could start it at a different number if we wanted to. I'm going to stick with number 1. And if we wanted to change the extension right here, we could click on the extension to go to uppercase, and then it's just all caps for JPEG. I'm just going to leave it as lowercase. Now, just like a good carpenter, measure twice, cut once. After you put in this information, you want to double check that it's correct. So I'm just going to review it really fast. For export location, you chose a specific folder, and then you choose where it's going to go. This is going to go into the exposure catalog, or no, not catalog, just the exposure folder for exposure project. Right? So it's going in the right spot. This is unchecked where it says add to this catalog, and we put existing files, ask what to do. For file naming, we're choosing a custom name by sequence. Here's our name. We've got the class period, last name, our first name, and then the name of the assignment, which is exposure. We're going to start at number 1. If all of that looks correct, click on export. You'll see in the top left that it's exporting the files. Now remember, it's not going to find one of my files. So it's going to say, oh, some export operations were not performed. Right? You're missing this file. And I am. And I'm going to say, okay, I'll deal with it. Click OK. And then it's done. So let's see where those files are at. If I minimize Lightroom, if I open up my Photo 1 class, and then I go to the exposure project, looky here, now we have a new folder called Exposure Finals. So go ahead and open up your Exposure Finals project, and you'll see the names of each of these. I'll make mine bigger by pressing Command and the plus button so you can see it a little better. If you wanted to, if you're like, I want to make sure I get an A on this assignment, I would further label these projects. So like for this one, it says this is a shallow depth of field. So I might click on it, wait a second, click on it again, and right after it has exposure, I'll put a dash and I'll say shallow depth of field, or DOF. Enter. And then this one's also a shallow depth of field. So I'll click on it, wait a second, click again. Right after where it says exposure, I'll put a hyphen and I'll say shallow depth of field. This one, it was my long exposure, so I'd place a hyphen, long, or I'd say slow shutter. I think that's how I worded it on the Canvas site. So you can label it however you want, as long as it has, I can tell that you went through the export process in Adobe Lightroom. That's the main thing I'm looking for. But if you want to make sure you get an A by saying you have every single photograph that I asked for, then you just add that little bit more information on it. If you get to this point and you're done with your photographs, all you have to do now is open up Canvas. I'll go to the student view. You go to the assignment, which today is exposure, and you go to exposure project. I've already submitted this once in a previous class, so I'm going to just do new attempt. Yours will just say submit. If you're not sure what to submit, read the assignment. Right? So like up here it says you will deliver 8 images, 2 that appear to be frozen in time, that's fast shutter, 2 slow shutter, 2 with a shallow depth of field, and 2 with the long or wide depth of field. So anyway, to submit this assignment, I'll click upload file. I want to add, you should have 8 photographs. For me, I only have 4 right now. So I've done that 4 times. I just move this to the side, and then I can click and drag one of these photos over where it says the choose file, and then we'll add it. If you're not sure which images there are here, just look at the numbering, right? Because they're numbered nicely inside here. I can say, oh, I got image 2, 3, 4, and 5 added in here. And then you'll click Submit Assignment. You should see confetti or something like that when you know it's submitted. If you don't wait and you just exit out really quick, it might not submit. On the right side, it will say submitted. If your screen is a little bit more narrow like mine, it'll say submitted right here at the bottom. And it'll tell you what you submitted. So in this case, it shows me that I submitted these 4 photographs. And it'll have the names of them. Let's say I submitted this today, but then tomorrow I go and take some of the photos that I'm missing. I'll know exactly what I'm missing because they're all labeled accurately. Right? I know what they are. And you can always resubmit up until 1 week before the end of the term. I'll accept it for late work. All right, what questions do you still have about this?